Hello, Charmies. This is Brunch with the Halliwells, a charm podcast. You're probably wondering what we're doing here today, and I asked myself that same thing. But get this, something wonderful happened the day of the finale. Once we posted, we had Pat Shan himself, the writer of season 10 of the comics. He apparently listened to our finale and commented and thanked us for talking about it and reading it. And then at that point, I hit him back and I go, "Hey, we would love to have you on here." And he said, "Anytime." So we had a discussion with him and we recorded it for your listening and viewing pleasure. And yeah, that is going to come later in the episode that we have here today. So this is not a comeback. This is just one off special. The opportunity came up and we didn't want to pass it up. So we are
Don't
back
call it
for
a
now.
comeback.
Yeah, right.
We-
That was
Hi,
the lovely
Charmies.
Ryan. Hello, Ryan. What has been
Hi,
going on
Rob.
since the finale?
Once more, the angel of destiny, Rob, has pulled us back for this. I think it was perfect alignment. And a matter of fact, when we did this interview, we were talking off camera, saying goodbye. And Pat mentioned he's going to a Comic-Con over the weekend or a convention. And I just so happened to be going to that as well. So, Rob, I feel like it's, again, one of our star-lined charmed magic that it just was so cool to be able to, say hello in person.
Yeah, I get that. That must have been great. And how was your encounter with him?
So, funny little story. There was a 2-story. It was in a university, right? I went with a friend of mine, and I was there to meet the Thundercats cast, and as Rob knows, and then it was the bonus, right? So after the Thundercats, it was meet Pat, but there were so many different booths, Rob, and vendors that I had no idea where he could be, right? So this was my mission. I should have told him this. So I looked at his stories on Instagram, and I noticed that, and for the Charmies that are listening to us on YouTube and watching this, there was a bat signal projected on the wall of the auditorium, and in Pat's photo, he posted, it was in the background.
So
I followed the bat signal literally and tried to pinpoint where his booth was. So I ended up, finding the booth, Rob, and it was very nice. I looked for some Charmed comics. I could not find it because, just moved and everything. So I picked up this Afterglow, which I love this. It was dedicated to Pat's cats and cats everywhere. And, I am a cat man. So here is Pat with his cats.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
Which made an appearance in our video, again, if you're watching this version. And it was nice to be able just to thank him in person for coming on the show. And he was just very nice. And he did say, if he in the future. So who knows? We definitely had a lot of questions that we didn't get to. So you never know, right?
Yeah. That's wonderful. I'm glad you had that encounter with him, and what timing. I think that was awesome. I wonder if you would have even recognized him had we not met him before your Comic-Con Sunday.
I had seen pictures of Pat, but no, you know what? If I didn't follow that bat signal and look for the Instagram, honestly, he probably would have blended in, unfortunately. So yeah, I am glad it lined up that way, that we had this great interview with him.
Awesome. Well, since the finale, I went on a small vacation to Oregon, and I stayed with a friend's family on their farm.
Yes.
Now, this particular farm, and Ryan's been waiting for this story. I haven't.
Yes, I can't believe it's happening finally.
So we went on this farm, and on this farm they have a sort of like a goat farm. So they raise and breed a lot of goats, right? And most of the goats that are there, along with other animals, they have a peacock, they have tons of
They have a
turkeys and
peacock?
yeah, it's wild. And most of these goats that are on their land are named after Harry Potter characters,
Oh, that's so
which is adorable. But there is this thing about whenever family or like really close friends of the owners come to visit, and there happens to be a goat that is born, that guest gets to name that goat. And we were warned of this. There was three of us that went up there, and we were warned of this before we got there, and the probability of a goat giving birth during our stay was really, really low. But what do you know? A mother
No.
had three baby goats,
Come
all,
on.
all girls, and we were like, oh, do we get to name them and blah blah blah, and they kind of like, do we, should we or shouldn't, I don't know if it counted, all this stuff. But I think that we were allowed to name them, but they were all girls, so we, were like, ooh, name them after us because we're all narcissistic, right? So we want more of our legacy somewhere. But no, I didn't really think much about it, right? If I did have the
my mind
opportunity,
already went there. You said 3 girls?
yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, my mind, I wasn't really worried about it. I was like, if a name like pops in my head or I feel very passionate about something, I'll suggest it. But a couple of days go by, and I happen to wear that day my charm shirt. So this is the one that you got me, where all the names are listed. And so the host.
This shirt has, by the way, spawned like 2 different I love that. Remember that whole thing with the conversation of like where the characters came from? Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. That other story I told you. So the host, so she asks me like, who are these names on your shirt? And so I explained to her what Charmed was, and she knew of the show but just never watched it. So she was like, oh, those are the names of the sisters. Okay, I get it. And she goes, why don't you just name the sisters or the goats these sisters? And I go, what are you serious? Like, are you really okay with that? And here's the thing, my 2 other friends had an opportunity to name their own. So I turn to them and I go, are you cool with, Prue, Piper, and Phoebe?
Okay.
And they go, yeah, no big deal. And so the 3 new goats on the land are now Prue, Piper, and Phoebe. And I could not have been like, I just gasped so much when she suggested this. She came up with this idea, not even me.
Oh, okay, so there's 3 thoughts right off the top of my head. First off, where are the pictures? I need to see these goats. 2, this is amazing because of Holly has her goat, right?
Exactly.
And so this is fantastic. And the third was, I was going to ask you, okay, Rob, but which sister did you choose? So you went classic. You went Prudence.
Yeah, well, I think how the conversation happened, because she saw 4 names, and I explained to her that one of them left the show while the other came in, so there was a new one, and so we just collectively decided to go with the original 3. And and
you know where I would have went.
And get this, the mom's name, Claire.
Boston Prue around.
I know. I was like, what? Yeah, the mom's name is Claire. So I was like, this is too good to be true. So,
oh my God, the goats.
I will post pictures for you, or I'll send them to you for one. But yeah, I'll definitely post the pictures of them.
Charmy's weeks. I had no idea this was a Charmed related story, but yes, it just got so much better.
So they're mostly covered in white with black spots on them, not in a Dalmatian like way, but just part of their fur is just coated with black. So that's pretty much the overall look of them. And yeah, so they had like baby kittens on there. I think a chicken even gave birth to a ton of like a dozen of chicks. And
you went for a weekend?
I think it was ducks. Who gave birth to ducklings. I was there for 5 days, but it was over a weekend.
Yeah. My God, 5 days.
Yeah, I slept in an authentic treehouse that had like pane windows, so it wasn't like super cold. The windows and doors were like
That sounds lovely.
yeah, it was cool. It was built in this Christmas tree farm that sort of went out of business, so there was just a bunch of branches, not branches, but stumps left.
Magical.
And yeah, and they just built an authentic tree house there, and we stayed there the whole time. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you were there for the birth of the charmed ones.
I know, right? Oh god. So yeah, that happened to me.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
then just this past weekend, funny how you got to meet a fan over the weekend. And so I really, really apologize if I'm so incorrect on this. It's been so long since I started the podcast, but I met in person a fan of the show. I don't believe I've met any other listener outside of virtual. Especially in person. So I think this was the first time that I actually met someone who actually listens to our show.
This is a beautiful. Tell us.
This also breaks another bucket list that somebody slid into my DMs, because while people reach out to me all the time, it's just one of those things where it's like you're asking to meet someone, and it wasn't like for romantic purposes. This was literally like a fan just meeting someone. So this guy hits me up. He is someone who lives close in the neighborhood, and he goes,
Okay.
I love your show, and I would love to meet you. Would you like to get coffee sometime? And so after a couple of exchanges,
lovely.
We met over the weekend, and he is a writer who actually co-wrote one, if not more, of the episodes of Poker Face. Is what he told me about. Yeah, I know, right? And he actually co-wrote one of the best episodes of the season, so he's pretty legit. And we just talked about Charmed and whatnot, and I was like, I just met a fan today, so that happened.
And he listens to these voices. This,
yeah,
you hooked him with that voice.
Yeah. So that has been going on since we stopped, and of course, there are more fans that are coming in that I'm hearing who are just starting. So it's really nice that this is going to continue on, even though we are not, putting out episodes every week like we used to. But anyways, we've been talking too much. Next up is our interview with Pat Shan. This was pre-recorded, so we can honestly and authentically say that we had a great time. It was a wonderful discussion. There were things that Ryan and I learned that we didn't know before.
No.
And he definitely gave us a couple of behind the scenes, as well as the process of writing for the show, anything that he could and could not do. It's very informative, and again, it's just a bunch of Charm fans just chatting about season 10. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and he will also be listing a couple of things to look up as far as future or present stuff that he's working on, so definitely check that out. There's notes in the and including Afterglow. There's notes in the production message where you are listening to this, as well as watching on YouTube. And while you are here, make sure to follow the YouTube page that is posting this. It is the Radical Retro Rewind podcast starring Ryan. So follow his YouTube page as well as his podcast, and listen to us shine every week. And we hope you enjoy this interview, and thank you again for coming back to listen to us. All right, Charmies, we have Pat Shan on the show with us. He is the writer of season 10 of Charmed, the comics. He's here to talk about the season, as well as letting us geek out over how great that season was. Welcome, Pat, to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Of course. So I just want to say Ryan came up with most of what we're going to say today. He has so many opinions.
now it's
questions. So whatever we ask is mostly from him. I just want to give him praise. Thank you for coming up with this stuff. Because when you gave me the list, I pretty much was like, I wanted to talk about that. So thank you for that. But Ryan, start us off. Where would you like to start? What do you want to talk about first?
Well, Pat, the first thing I noticed was we're both Long Islanders. We're both.
Really?
Are you still here on Long Island, by the way?
Right now.
Oh, me too.
Gang, gang.
I love that, and a cat dad too, which I love. I saw in your biography.
Of course, yeah, of course. Got 4 of them. I mean, officially 2 of them, but
Yeah.
I love that. I love
Well,
that.
again, thank you for accommodating my West Coast vibe here with the time zones. I know it's a little late over there.
Oh, hey, you know what? I also used to live on the West Coast. I grew up on Long Island in Freeport. I've lived in Dix Hills, North Babylon, and Coral.
Ooh.
And I've also lived in San Diego for 2 years.
Beautiful.
So I love both coasts. So yeah.
Nice. I want to kind of start exactly like your calling to this as a writer. Like, where did this come from? How did it spark? When did you tell yourself like this is what I'm going to be doing?
I was young. I must have been like 6 or 7. My Aunt Christine got me Goosebumps books for my birthday, and I read The Barking Ghost with my mother, and then I took off and read It Came From Beneath the Sink on my own.
Oh,
And I started to my mom had a typewriter, an old school typewriter, and I would write single page sequels to each of the Goosebumps books on these typewriters. And
Love that.
my goal in life was to take over Goosebumps when R.L. Stine died.
Hey, dream big. I love that.
Yeah. And he's still alive, so hey,
yeah.
There's still time, actually. Yeah.
who knows, yeah, I always wanted to write. Ever since I could read, I just thought, oh, someone does this. There's a name credited to this. Someone does this, and that can be me. I began to notice writing in everything as I grew up even more. Obviously movies, TV, and then even things like I would go to a theme park, a haunted house, and I would hear a voiceover, a little narrative. I was like, wow, someone wrote that. Someone wrote these magazine articles. And I saw how writing was everywhere, and I wanted to do it all.
Nice. I love that. I think that's great. And it seems like you're really enjoying this career. Is this like your full-time job? This is what you do. This is your career.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nice. I love that. You got on to season 10. I guess we should start with like how you ended up a writer for this last season. And when you were attached to the project, did you know it was going to be the last season?
Did I know it was going to be the last season? I had a sense because, well, to dial back a little bit, I submitted to Zenescope, who's the publisher who had the license at the time, and I had just written a short Angel story for IDW, and there's the WB CW connection there. It's the same kind of era, so thought it could be a cool kind of way to get in there. So I wrote to Zenescope, and I specifically asked what was going on with Charmed, if there was any opportunities there, and I was given the chance to pitch, and I pitched a 3-issue just standalone series. I saw that Paul Roditis was doing season 9, so I didn't want to step on any toes. Season 9 was about halfway through when this was going on.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened was they read my synopsis, and it was actually Paul himself, Paul the at the time the season 9 writer, who read it and liked it and thought it would be cool to have me do an arc on Charmed after his season. So he had season 9, and it was issues 1 through 24. He was going to do 25 as a one shot, and then have me do an arc, and then who knows what happens.
Gotcha.
But time went on and on and on, and as Paul's season wrapped up, and there was sort of confusion over whether that issue 25 was going to happen or not at all, I was asked by Paul and Zenescope to, instead of do the miniseries, just do a full season. And at the time, we didn't know what shape the season would take as far as how many issues. I pitched it to be identical to Paul's, 24 issues. And the truth is that by the time I started, I was already doing other stuff with Zenescope. So I was in the conversation as far as sales go. And I knew that for them at the time, Charmed was we have this license, this known property title. It didn't sell well. People who mostly read Charmed would read it illegally. They would they would download it. And the trade paperbacks did okay. The Paul's, I think, season 9, volume 1 was a New York Times bestseller or something like that.
I love that.
Yeah, so the trades did well, but as far as single issues go, the idea that we were going to do 50 issues total with Paul's 24 and maybe 25th in my season, that's, even back then when it was more common for indie comics to go long, that's a really long run.
Yeah.
So I got the sense that what I was doing, I should do it for keeps. Really early on.
Yeah. Very good. Well, so hearing back, you said that you wrote to them and asked them about the opportunity of Charmed.
Right.
Was it because you are a huge fan of the show, or was it just an opportunity to do something that is well known in pop culture? What is your relationship with Charmed beforehand?
What is my relationship with Charmed? I wasn't an Uber fan. I had seen it and I had liked it. And I just like that structure of show. I kind of miss the idea of a 22 to 24 episode genre show that you can really invest in for a long period of time. Yeah. I love the idea of arc episodes and standalone episodes kind of mixing. That has really gone by the wayside with streaming. People want these really concise, story-driven seasons where you can't kind of get messy. Like, I like to get messy sometimes,
That's where the fun probably comes out. Things that you wouldn't be able to do normally during like an arc, but you could do a one-off fun episode.
Exactly. I had seen it, enjoyed it, but the fact was that I saw it more as this is a thing that I could write well. I feel like I can get a grip on these characters' voices. I wasn't an obsessed fan, and that I think is a good thing. I think that you should be able to approach it not from the perspective of a shipper or someone really hyper involved. Like, there are certain stories that I love that I would be able to really do a good job, I think. But there are certain TV shows, movies that I'm just a pure fan. And I think that sometimes being a pure fan gets in the way of you trying divisive things. And my season was divisive. There are people who love it. There are people who say it's the best season ever, which is crazy. I like what Paul did on season 9. And of course I like what I did. But as a Charmed fan, now that because when I got the gig, I went back and it wasn't just me watching casually on TV anymore. I studied the entire thing back to front, and including, and really, probably even more than the show, Paul's comics, because that was the last thing that had happened to the characters,
Right.
Yeah.
So I studied it deeply, loved what Paul did, but the truth was, at the end, I wanted to take big swings. So yeah, there are people who love my season, and that's cool to see, and there are people who hate my season, and that I completely understand, and that is okay to me, because if it was a season where people would just go, "Oh, it's cool," it's more Charmed, that to me is the worst possible thing. I would rather have people hate it, because that means I took chances, So the fact that it's this mixture of hate and love, I think it's indicative of, if it doesn't work for everyone, at least we tried something kind of crazy,
Yeah.
It's funny because, and not just because you're here, when we were doing this, the 2 seasons, we enjoyed season 9 for sure. We were so glad to go back into the world, see the characters again. But I think and I don't want to speak for Rob, but I feel like by season 10, we already, from the first few issues, we were invested like that, as opposed to how things were in season 9. Season 10, I feel like there was almost a heightenedness about it. Even the art, I felt like, changed and got heightened per se.
Yeah, we wanted a steady artist for sure, and that was a lot of that comes from Paul. You know, Paul was the season 9 writer, but he was also the editor for the first arc of season 10. And he really set us up in an amazing way. You know, he was my charmed guru. He remains a great friend to me, and he had such an immense task of starting season 9 and making that into the compelling story that he did, because the end of Charmed is very definitive. Paul really set the stage for me to just come in and mess around, you know, because he did the hard parts, you know.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, when Pat was talking about the number of episodes, well, for us it was like an episode of the show, number of issues,
still in TV mode, yeah.
We had heard that it was shortened, so I mean, we'll probably get into it when we talk about season 10. But when you were saying you had that in mind, you know, equal to season 9, how it was this many issues. So did that affect the story in a drastic way, having to wrap it up sooner?
Did it affect the story in a drastic way? No. It made things faster paced. You know?
Okay.
We would have. All right. So up to, I think, issue 17 was Effigy, where they find out that Prue is kind of messed up now, you know. That was what we had planned up until then. It's the final arc, which ended up being 18 to 20 in actuality.
Yeah.
It was originally 18 to 24, but early on, I found out probably about midway through writing the Four Sisters arc, I found out that it would go down to 22.
Okay.
And then I started writing, I think it was 18 or 19. I think it was 19 actually. And it was pretty much a pencils down call. It was we do not know what's happening with Charmed at Zenescope. And I was thinking of ways to make it easier for Zenescope to just wrap it up. And I was looking at what we had left. It would have been 20, 21, and 22. So I know definitively my pitch was make it 20 and make 20 extra long. Ooh. I think also I changed 19, so it pretty much became what was 19 and 20 became 19. What was 21 and 22 became 20.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it becomes minor things like it might have changed. I mean, you know, that sequence about how Prue kidnaps everyone that she needs for the Advent, you know, that might have played out longer. You know, we might have had more of a sort of tense sequence of her collecting what she needs. We might have had a few more steps in the plan to try to stop this from happening. We might have had a few more twists and turns during the actual Advent. But when I look back and read that, I don't see the missing stuff, you know?
Beautiful, though.
Thank you. One of the things that I was asked to cut anyway would have added a lot more story. So they made it easy by rejecting one of my major ideas.
Which was,
wow.
Yeah, just spill the actual.
That sounded, beautiful, like setup. My goodness.
Yeah, we're at brunch, so this is the time to gossip. So yes.
Okay, well, you know how I think it's 19 maybe, where Prue turns Henry to a statue?
Yes.
That was going to be it for that guy.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
In the middle of the... Okay.
It wasn't going to be a statue. He was just going to be deceased. And
wow.
CBS said that's too much for Paige to go through.
You had them fighting. Their marriage was like on the brink and then done. Single mom. That's it.
And I would have made it.
Wow.
I would have made it so it mattered. I would have needed the page space though. You know, it would have been because like that I hate when a show or a comic book, but in this case, I connected to the TV series. You know, and
Yeah.
I think of have either of you seen Veronica Mars?
Yes. Not the full. I still need to watch the new one, the revised, but yes.
Okay, I will say the not reboot, the revival of that.
Yeah.
It handles certain things in a way where, to me, it didn't honor the spirit of the original show. It breezed past major emotional beats to become a new thing. So I never wanted to have what would be major moments breezed past. So to me, I got the Henry note before we shortened the season. If we had shortened the season and then I looked at the outline, I would have changed the Henry thing anyway.
Okay.
Because I wouldn't have time to deal with it. You know, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
time to make it matter. And instead, what it was, because here's the thing, that plot line, the resolution of Henry and Paige, is actually the one that of everything that we did, that's the most common thing that I hear that people didn't like how that arc ended. And to me, like they say that it wipes things away because Paige's mind was wiped and she has a blank slate. I didn't see it that way at all. What I saw it was this. I saw that it's like when someone that you love gets sick. You know, all the other shit that's going on in your life that complicates things, you focus in, it doesn't matter anymore. As soon as Paige almost lost Henry and Henry came back and saw how close he was to losing her, it just gave them a new slate that was symbolized by Paige's blank slate. You know, it wasn't wiping away the problems. It was them choosing to value what's important in their life, their marriage, and to move on, accepting their own flaws. I mean, to me, it's the same thing that Piper and Leo went through.
Yeah.
Where they finally accept that this is their normal. You know, there's no quest to find some you know, white picket fence version of normal. This is their normal. They're going to embrace it. This is Paige and Henry realizing that this is not going to change, and I can't lose you.
Well said. Well said. I like that. Thank you for revealing that. I'm still stuck on Henry dying. So what would you say would be the reason for that big jump there?
Well,
what did
was
you
it
have in
because
mind when
Prue
you wrote
was
that?
she wanted to look out for her little sister? She was going to get revenge. Paige was upset, right?
There are so many bits when Prue is on her rampage where she acts out in a twisted way using Prue defense of her sister logic. Even though she's going after her sisters, there's multiple instances of her acting like the sister, but in a really twisted way. So the answer is yes. You know, that is the reason that would happen to Henry in the story, in the world of Charmed. The reason why it would happen in the writing world, the thought behind it was obviously with this kind of thing. The entire thesis of the season is that trying to run from death is futile. It doesn't mean that you're going to avoid death. It means that you're prolonging something and living in fear of something. And Henry was going to be a bit of a cautionary tale. He was actively living in fear and sort of sabotaging things with Paige with the idea of this is going to go bad for us someday. So then we had it go bad, you know, and I wanted to see how Paige deals with that, with Henry being right that it is going to go bad one day, and then you have to live with the idea that there's a bad day coming for all of us.
Oh,
Oh God, I have so many thoughts. Oh my God, I love this.
Well, I gotta say that Paige and Henry's sort of like marital, you know, thing, that this debate of, you know, can, you know, mortals and, you know, magical beings, coexist? Can they get married? Can they start a family? Is this an inevitable bad thing? Eventually he is going to crack, especially because he is mortal. He can't do much as far as help, and you want to be there for your family. And I know that this was so hard for him. So like, I loved just the exploration of that, regardless of how it ended. I just enjoyed that. There was a little bit of hint, and maybe you can kind of clarify that Paige was almost struggling about drinking again. There were few images where you kind of focused on, like, will she take a drink, or is this like her way of coping? And
which, Pat, I love, by the way, because I feel like that was a plot that was like many that get forgotten, but Paige's alcoholism was something that they could have done all these seasons with, and it took you in season 10 to actually bring it back. I always said, I wish they would have done something in the series with that plot point.
That was a major plan. As I was doing my big rewatch, I was writing down every plot and the resolution. And by the end, I was like, wow, there's a lot of ideas that they introduced and did not follow up on.
Yeah.
That I made major parts of my season, because the idea is, I look at what Boom Studios is doing with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think that Boom is a great company. However, they took a beloved title and they're giving an alternate universe version of it.
Yeah.
I don't think that the fans really respond to that as well as do the show, do the thing. I wanted to do Charmed, and I wanted to give fans what they wanted in a way that I felt good about, that I felt was a good story. So if I could, as I tell my story, if I could make Charmed fans go, oh, that's how that resolves. Oh, that harkens back to that. He really did his research, because this wasn't in the show, but it started and never resolved, but now it gets tied up here. I wanted that, because I, as a fan myself, I would have liked that in other media that I've loved, and that's how stuff like, Benjamin Turner became a major part of the season.
Yes.
And I mean, honestly, to me, the biggest plot hole in Charmed, and it's a joke, it's not a plot hole, but it's the fact that Grams sucks and no one says anything.
Okay.
And she's a horrible person, and they just let her bullshit in the attic. Like, someone say something, like how does this go on for so long? So I had them say something,
Leo definitely had some feelings, and so no, I get that.
The Ben Turner, I always call them the soul balls, as a joke on this podcast. But doing some research, I noticed that it said that, if it's right, one of your favorite characters to write for was Cole.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So having that big plot point of him going against the Charmed Ones for his father's soul in that season, and then nothing ever happening. It's, again, another thing that you were able to, like you were saying, these plot points that weren't resolved. So I have to thank you for that as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's one of those things where I was invested in the Cole story, and it really felt kind of stop and go throughout the entire run. Like he would come back, and then it would kind of just peter out a little bit and go in a weird direction. And I get it. He was, at the time, he was going to be a major star. He was going, I think, to Nip Tuck, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I get it's dynamic to work on the show. The actresses all became producers. Shannon Doherty left midway through. They had a lot thrown at them, so I completely empathize. So my thought was, hey, I have an artist who's going to draw whatever I say. I have no personalities to deal with, except Shannon Doherty, who did not want to be drawn into the book at all. But I had no one to really worry about except myself, the artist, Zenescope, and CBS. And CBS was supportive throughout. The only notes that they really gave, besides "Don't kill Henry," they were very protective of how the actresses were drawn. on the cover, on the interiors, they always had notes to be given, and because they don't want, you know, a fan to take an issue of Charm season 10 to Holly Marie Combs, and she opens it, she's like, "What the hell is this?" You know?
Yeah.
So that's why that, you know. And yeah, they had some continuity notes just to make it all smooth, and they were great to work with. So I found myself in the position where I didn't have to worry about what the TV show producers had to worry about.
I like that. And I'm glad that they were able to work with you, because I think season 10 turned out to be great. So I know Charm sometimes has a lot of heavy, you know, notes to like, this is how we like to do things. So it's good to hear that they were very supportive. You did bring up Prue and Shannon, you know, not having her likeness in the comics. Did that inspire you at all with what we got with Patience and just that whole storyline? Like, do you feel that you would have done this exact story if you did have Shannon's likeness in there?
If we had Shannon, there would be two changes, and the story it wouldn't change the story at all. I would show her more in flashbacks.
Okay.
And I can't picture how I did it offhand. I know that there's the issue. I think it was called Virtue, where Prue goes into her own psyche and she meets Patience.
Yes. Oh,
yes.
Yes, I remember that one.
I believe that we drew Prue as her glowing blue form in that issue. I feel like if we had the likeness, why wouldn't we just draw Shannon? You know, because that's her essence. You know, and then the other thing is that in the final scene, we drew someone who looked Shannon adjacent.
We both were just like, oh yes, yep.
Yeah. And if we had the likeness, we would have obviously fully showed her, you know?
Yeah.
And that would have been a crazy final page. But we didn't have it, and I think that it still worked out. But as far as the setup of Prue and Patience and all that, that was one of the first major ideas that came to me.
Ooh, okay.
And I did kind of hide it, you know, because my pitch was this, that Tyler goes into the demonic wasteland. Well, a bit further back. It was always episode. Arc 1 focuses on the ancient Athame, which leads to the Charm Ones or whoever. It ended up being Coop being indebted to Cole that they want to find the second half of his father's soul. Leads to the demonic wasteland, where Tyler goes, and using his new powers, he gets poisoned or infected by the blood of Hermes, and he becomes this
like conduit,
conduit, perfect.
Yeah.
Conduit for the big bad.
Yeah.
And that was where I left off, that Tyler is the conduit for this character. And then my goal, which I was like, this is too big to pitch when I'm writing issue 1, 2, and 3. I have to show that I'm going to crush this and then pitch the big thing. Because if it ended up being that Tyler was the big bad, I would play out the Prue thing in a similar way, but I couldn't make her Hermes. I would have to change things. But I ended up pitching that Prue solves that situation, and then the grimoire, the Imperial Sword in her, everything that makes her the all bonds with and is infected by Hermes, and essentially poisons her essence and turns her into the big bad.
Gotcha.
So that is a crazy thing to pitch when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
So I kind of hit it as, we're bringing this big evil in through Tyler, and then we'll figure out what to do next. But what to figure out was always going to be Prue.
Gotcha.
Smart.
There was a little bit of talk. We may have mentioned it once or twice. We were curious if Prue's id had anything to do with sort of her shift in attitude in addition to the grimoire and the sword and how it affected her, did it have anything to do with this at all?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I feel like I could leave that open for interpretation.
Fair. That's totally fair.
What I will say, though, is that the sisters all had their own flaws. And I mean, I've seen a lot of funny YouTube videos that make fun of how intense these characters can be sometimes, And listen, I love Prue because I love flawed characters, but I think that there's a lot of things that she did during the show that were genuinely heroic. And there's a lot that she did that was deeply selfish. And I think that Prue can be a very self-centered character. And I'm saying this, she is my favorite right now. It shifts sometimes. Of the three sisters, Prue is my favorite character of those three.
Okay.
So I say this not as a Prue hater, and I'm just saying that because the fans are so sensitive sometimes. But Prue, I love Prue, and I love that she's this way. A little bit selfish. Being dead and infecting the body of a coma patient, immensely selfish.
Thank you. Yes. Me and Ryan were debating about this because Ryan's like, this cannot be Prue. Prue would never do this. She's the the powerful witch. She's so good. And I'm like, this woman is horrible right now. Just with this decision alone, the moment we learned about the essence, I was like, there's still bits of her in, like, Patience is not gone. That was hard to swallow. And I was a little like, should I share my feelings about this? Because I don't want to crap all over Prue, but this is a very selfish thing that she's doing. This is not cool. She's not, so I get it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the way that it was set up, we could have easily believed that, as it was written, there was no chance that Patience comes back. Prue picks the body because of that. She picks the body of a witch with a name that starts with P because of only that. And I just thought, Prue can pull a demon out of time. Prue can turn that demon into a human. But Prue can reassemble a shattered body and put a 1900s ghost in there, and it's just okay. But Prue can't reach into a body of a coma patient and revive her. It seemed weird, and it seemed like if I didn't address that she didn't try, I feel like that would not have been an honest depiction of where I was going with her story.
Yeah.
So I believe that if Prue was in the situation where she saw Patience and genuinely believed that she could save her as a spirit before she entered her body, I believe Prue would have saved her and not entered her body. I believe that Prue genuinely thought, I can't do this. But then Prue's power increased to the extent that she could do it. And she was already so invested in her new life here and trying to make things right and trying to reclaim her life that I believe that she convinced herself that she couldn't do it. And that when she saw that there was pushback there from the whatever shattered remainder of Patience was within her, she was already impacted enough by the warring of good and evil inside of her that she made a horrible decision.
That's fair. No, it's fair. Thank you for clearing that up. We were a little curious. I even saw a video the other day where just hearing the id sort of, talk about how she just wants life and she wants out and she wants to, do all these things that Prue was scared to do. And somebody was like, hey, this sounds a little bit too familiar. It could definitely tie in. Maybe we should rethink. And so Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, of course.
So, not to make it all about Prue, but
I mean, it's a major Prue season.
It is.
You know, I gave everyone as much as I could. I wanted everyone to be doing something. I mean, even like Kareem and Tyler have their own arc, you know.
Yeah.
And I wanted all the sisters to have a major arc. But what interested me most going in was Prue and Cole.
Very good. Very good.
I have to tell you though, so your portrayal of Prue and Paige was honestly, and Rob knows, I gushed every issue about that because of course every fan wants to know how it would have been. You know, we got a little bit of it in season 9, but to me, the way you just made, you know, had Paige, you know, really rally behind her, get behind her, trust in her, want so much for her to be this, you know, this ideal big sister, and the love, I thought was just, honestly, I think I needed that as a Charmed fan, and having Prue and Paige both, honestly, my favorite characters. So I have to thank you again just for these moments between those two sisters particularly, because to me, it played just like I would want it to play.
Well, thank you. That was some of the most exciting stuff for me to write. You know, I like Paige a lot too, and I feel like that's such an interesting dynamic. And you know, people always imagine there being this intense rivalry immediately, you know, and I think that there's a lot more subtle ways to play that, and more, you know, ways that mine character in a more meaningful way.
Since we're in a praising mood right now, I want to thank you for
Yeah, keep on.
No, I really want to thank you for Kareem.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I love Charmed. It's probably my favorite show, but you know, there is a little bit of a lack of diversity. Yes, we got Daryl the whole time, but you know, I don't want people counting how many black people they know on one hand, right? Like I wanted more, and I'm glad that you created someone like Kareem, especially for just how supportive and loving,
Yeah,
and just also just the relationship that you created between the two of them, I thought was fantastic. I love that he supported Tyler. I don't think Tyler could have gone through with any of that without him. He was just a really cool guy to watch. He was saying all the right things. And at first, you know, I saw a picture of him before getting into the comic, and immediately I was like, "Oh, is this Max?" And I was like, but I didn't see his name attached to the face, so I was like, "Oh, this must be a new person."
Yeah.
And I like that you allowed for a homosexual couple to be in this show, for one, because we only got maybe 2 or 3 characters, but one full-on relationship in the show. So it was really nice to be able to see that, and I thought you written those two very, very well. What was your sort of process of bringing Tyler back and also making him gay?
I mean, you know what's funny is looking back, I don't even know if maybe I talked to Paul about it, and I don't know if I asked him what his thoughts were on Tyler being gay. I don't know if he had it in mind, but I I remember it was one of those things where I thought the power was cool and bringing him back seemed natural, and that conversation, as soon as we started to make him an integral part of the story, I don't remember there being any real pitch for that. I feel like it was just part of what we understood about the character. I can't really clock why, you know. But by the time that we figured out what he was going to do, where his power was going to grow and become a different thing that would facilitate the trip in the second arc to the wasteland in a positive way, and then in the final 2 arcs with the Tuatha battle and then with the Advent be really intense and scary thing for everybody. We wanted someone that would be a rock for Tyler while not being in the narrative because of Tyler. We wanted him to have his own character, his own story, his own vibe. And the fact is that Charmed does so much right, but I think a perfect example of how little diversity there is in Charmed is Henry and Coop look similar enough that the artist, a great artist who can draw details of faces extremely well, put those two guys together in a scene and you're going to have to look really hard.
Yeah. If you listen to our season, like it's back and forth. Like, am I looking at Coop or am I looking at Henry? And there were a few issues where there were great like face features that likenesses were really good. But then sometimes I'd be like, wait a minute. And I would try and pay attention to clothes to make sure I don't mix it up.
I mean, me too.
Yeah.
And the thing about those guys is like in real life, they are both tall, good-looking, brunette, dark-featured white dudes with pillowy lips. Like they look the exact same. Even
Perfect
in real
description.
Life. You know?
I love that.
So it's like when I was going in, I was like, all right, every new character that we bring in has to bring something to Charmed. Where if we look at a picture, it doesn't feel like they're all related, you know? And I mean, that's why, you know, this is another thing that I got critiqued for, and this I totally get. It is that I wouldn't say this is like a smear on the season, but I will say that I wouldn't do this if I knew that a different thing was going to happen. Mm-hmm. At the same time as we were putting out season 10, that is, I was writing the novel Charmed Social Medium. And that shit was supposed to take place between Paul's season and novels and my season. So when my season began, the Charmed ones already knew this character Amelia. And she was, and it's been so long since I've even looked at Social Medium. Looking back, I believe that Amelia is, I know she has blue hair. I believe that she is a blue hair gay medium. That's what I know about Amelia off rip, right? Mm-hmm. So even her, I wanted her to look different, more modern, more of a different vibe. You know, I just wanted the characters, all the new characters, not only to bring something visually different, but just bring a different power set, bring a different thing to bring to the table. And that was Kareem, that was Amelia, and it sucks that no one could really read why the fuck she's there, you know?
Yeah.
But
we when she was introduced, you know, immediately I was just like, I want to know more. But it wasn't in this way of like, how dare you just throw somebody in and we don't know what's going on. And then we did a little research and found out about social media.
The comic does have that little asterisk that actually says to see the book, so it was in the planning stages then.
It was. I mean, it was written, it was done, it was supposed to come out, and then it just absolutely did not.
Yeah, I definitely got like spinoff vibes from her. I think she probably could have carried a wonderful series based on where she was from and what was going on, and just sort of leading into, you know, sort of the mixed relationship that she had with the Charm ones. It seemed like there was a little bit of animosity there, but I was very curious about them, as well as the band.
I
like them too. They were pretty good.
It was fun. Those characters were fun to ride. They came about by just, you know, I needed characters to facilitate Benjamin getting a chance to do this thing and then not being able to do it. And I wanted to do it in a very fun and light way, because what he's doing is sad. It's devastating. And I didn't want it to be this big dark thing. He's, you know, his life is really steeped in darkness. I wanted it to instead come up in a kind of fun and interesting and colorful way, you know? But yeah. I feel like Amelia could have been cool to know. Here's something about those novels. I was going to do 3. I was doing Charm Social Medium, Symphony for the Devil, and the idea was to do one more. I wanted each novel, you know, all these novels focus on the Charm ones pretty squarely. Social Medium, I'd say that Phoebe is the main character, and there is a strong, cool Cole and Prue subplot. but each novel introduces a major new witch. So, Social Medium, Amelia. Symphony for the Devil, I am 99% sure her name was Ruby Blackwood. She's like a Taylor Swift type character.
Okay.
And then there was going to be a third one, and my idea was to do something with politics. But the third one never happened. Not even a word ever written, not even a plot. And Social Medium, ready for print. Written, edited, copy edited, 100% done. Symphony for the Devil, written on an immensely intense deadline. Not even a single note given, nothing. I don't feel like anyone on planet Earth has read it but me.
Wow.
Okay.
Things were already falling apart with Joe
Yeah.
Books by the time that I wrote that, as far as the charm license goes. So that's why that happened. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to bring up, I believe his name was Valen. So he was the one that had to. I really, really liked Valen. I loved his look. I liked how threatening he was. And he was funny.
Yeah.
And there was this real badass moment when it's established on what the Athame can do, and then it cuts to our first victim. And I wanted to just get more clarity on this. It looks like he took out Death.
All right. This is a thing that comes up to me all the time.
The tribunal, right?
I love the character Death. So I was really happy that you brought him back, and then you took him away from me, and I was like, what? How dare you? So yes, more clarification on this.
All right, he can't die. The reason that I didn't show him sort of like suffer and escape is because I established that the way that you activate the Athame is the blood of a being that rides the line between life and death. Mm-hmm. That's him. He was the activation of it. That was not a deadly Athame yet.
Gotcha.
Oh, great. Yeah. That's wonderful.
It'll be the same thing as just stabbing him with a screwdriver. You know, he was chilling. Like the Athame activated while in him, so he had that little blur action. But he probably in bed for a week, you know, but he's chilling.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, he got reconstituted and he is just fine. So that makes a lot more sense now. Thank you for that. But again, love Valen. I thought he was an awesome villain. Do you have like a favorite villain or big bad throughout your season that you favor or enjoyed writing?
I'll go through them. You know, Valen was fun. I got my name for him from a friend of mine. Actually, a friend of mine who was a big Charm fan, and he actually early on he wrote an email to Zenescope's store asking a question. And from the reply, he noticed that there was a certain format to the emails where it was like the name, the @ and then he was like, I bet you, Pat, if you put the editor's name in this format, you'll reach him. And you should ask him about writing Charm. And I did. And it worked out. So I gifted him with the first villain being named after him.
Nice. That's awesome.
Wonderful. That's a great little Easter
egg. What I liked about Valen was that, you know, I generally preferred low-level demons. So giving a low-level sort of the major villain role was fun to me. Because the truth is, like, all those high-level demons with the grandiosity, like, people like Zanku as a villain, to me, he is a dork, dude. Like, he looks like he went to Hot Topic, you know? Like, he is an absolute dork. So Valen is always, he's more of a casual kind of guy. You know, he has a big idea, and I mean, for what happened, and him being low level, he carried it out pretty well.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So that was cool. As far as writing established characters, I feel like Barbas is probably, if you were to give most writers a shot at writing Charmed, and you say you could have one established villain for a whole season, make that villain the big bad, I feel like 9 out of 10 writers go Barbas.
Yeah.
He has a really specific voice. He's creepy, and that was fun.
Yeah.
I find Tuatha to be beautiful, so I had to bring her in for a major role.
Nice.
And
yeah, we thought we were gonna see Kyle for a second too. We were like, is Kyle gonna come in and help a little bit? But
I mean, there's so many options. Charmed Charmed had a pretty cool rogues gallery.
Truly.
I mean, also speaking of dorks, like Shax is a dork too. Like,
yeah.
But love that Vanquish we got with the all four sisters together. That revenge, so good.
Yeah, that was pretty
that felt cool. That felt cathartic to write. It's one of those things where, like, the show did what it did, and it was good. But with Prue back, it makes it hit different. But my cats are going crazy downstairs. My favorite villain overall to write was Prue. Prue was such a complex character to me. And when she became infected by Haramis, just the war inside of her, where the dominant spirit was still Prue, but it was so torn apart by the Haramis infection and by, what made her into the All, that she was influenced horribly. She could have never become that way on her own. For sure, but this made her that way. It wasn't a body that Prue was also in, possessed by Haramis, because that would just be Patience's body.
Yeah,
it was Prue doing all of this.
Yeah, I was trying to decipher all of that because there were times when Haramis would sort of talk in the, I guess, is it third person? He would just kind of say like Prue's name.
Yes.
And like I'm in her body, or I'm this, but then he would say, you did this to your sister. So there were times where I was like, is it Haramis or is it Prue just really just angry? And
the answer is yes. It was all of that. It was an immense identity crisis, and it happened as the result of Prue being where she shouldn't have been, and even when she did heroic things, her stepping in to save Tyler and stop that situation, she was the one to do that. But she was also the only one who could have bonded with Haramis in that way and essentially absorbed him in that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm sure you are asked this a lot too. There is a villain name, and the whole season was like, is this how you pronounce it? Is this how you pronounce it? You probably know where I'm going. Is it Gaxagil? Or the neighbor that, the tentacle? Yes. How do you pronounce that name again?
All right. So I said it recently on a podcast.
Yeah.
I have it in my head. I just want to make sure it comes out right.
Yes.
I believe that I said, and I've always said, Gaxagil.
Okay, we would have never come up with.
Well,
that.
Rob knows I can't speak to begin with, so this was a pleasure trying to read these names.
Yeah, no, those are fun.
But you said it so nicely.
Yeah.
I mean, that character I remember very well because he was going to be the villain of this little 3-issue Piper story that I was going to do if I didn't get the season gig. Like that was the original thing I pitched, was that a little 3-issue miniseries. And it was a Piper story, and Gaxagil was the villain, and that was it, So me having him as the opening villain in this was a sort of nod to the pitch that got me the gig.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome.
I'll just say, Pat, do you think working with CBS, and it sounded like they were invested at least.
Yeah.
Do you think the higher ups though know how big a fan base this. I mean, the comics, like you were saying, they got pirated. Unfortunately, I wish they would have sold better. But do you think they know, the higher ups, how big this fan base actually is almost 25 years later?
You know what? I would say, just because with me, I was talking to two people. I can speak for them that they did, but looking at it in a larger sense, I didn't much follow the Charm reboot, right? But I was talking to a friend recently. It ran 4 seasons, right?
Yeah.
The fact that they brought it back at all as a reboot, and the fact that it ran 4 seasons, I think the answer is yeah. That's pretty uncommon. Like, I feel like we look back at the CW era, and you have like your Dawson Streaks, you have your Buffy, you have your Felicity, you have your Charmed. I think largely when you look at genre fiction of that kind of show, Buffy and Supernatural are seen as the ones that have the bigger fan bases.
Yeah.
But Buffy was supposed to have a reboot, and it didn't work out.
Yes.
And I mean, there's a million reasons why that maybe happened, but the fact that the Charmed one did, I think that does speak to CBS being aware that there's a fan base to lean into here. Now, I just have to say, I strongly don't think that means that we're in for more Charmed licensed material, like comics, like books. I mean, there's definitely not much I can say, but I always felt like my season was my definitive take on Charmed, and that I wouldn't. It would be, if I didn't have a great idea for a season, it would be foolish to go back. But I would go back. I do a lot of my own stuff. I'm my own publisher, and I am on Kickstarter doing my own thing. I feel like if I could do it entirely on my own, then that could be a cool way to either do the novels or to do a new season.
Ooh.
But
Yeah.
I feel like this isn't kind of crazy to say. I mean, I can't say details, but I will say that just if you know me and you know my presence, I feel like it's pretty easy to assume that is there a way to do this is a question that I would have asked CBS. And right now, I don't see it happening.
It's so sad because I always say to Rob and our viewers on this show, it's one of those shows that it has these generational fans. Like, of course, the original ones, the old men that we are. I always say on this show, but it's kids are watching it, and it's on. I mean, it's still on reruns every day, and it's like this big 25th anniversary. It would be amazing to get another tie-in, that book released or something like that. It's sad because it seems like, it's making money still. I mean, they're still putting out Charmed random. I got a cup the other day, like a Charmed mug.
There are fans. I mean, I don't have any more copies now. I ran out of my comps, but I used to bring the graphic novels to conventions, and I would hear from older ladies about being Charm fans. And then just this past weekend, I was in Miami, and I was at not gonna do demonetize, a spicy club, and and I was talking to a young lady, and she just randomly says, "Oh, do you know the show Charmed?" And I was like, as a matter of fact, I actually do. Her favorite show, and that's the thing that it comes up everywhere. It comes up across generations, as you were saying. And it's an enduring fan base, and it's one of those things where people like a long show. I mean, look at anime. You could start watching One Piece now, and just before you end, you are deceased. And Charmed ran 8 long seasons. People who want to binge, that is a great candidate.
Oh, yes.
So I think it's making new fans to this day. I think it's a good bet to invest in the future of Charmed. I don't know if that's going to show up as novels, comics, more TV show. I feel like it would be very difficult to bring the original cast back for a reunion, even though it seems on Twitter as if they really wanted to. The personalities seem like they definitely in ways, you know.
Yeah. I've already checked out.
Yes.
It's not because of losing hope. It's just being realistic. Like if
Yeah.
it happens, then it's gonna surprise me. But
Yes.
that was gonna be one of the questions that I was gonna ask last.
Yeah.
Was if you had an opportunity to write for Charmed again, would you prefer it to be sort of an animation form, or would you like a live action? I've always like campaign for an anime or animation because you don't have to have the sisters in a room together working.
Of course.
They can just do voiceovers whenever they are able and they don't have to interact. And but yeah, I mean, the ideas that are popping in your head, do you think they can be accomplished in a live action, or would you prefer an anime, or an animation?
I feel like if there was a limited budget, I feel like an animation would be the way to go. But if we could have a big budget and the main cast and have it live action, it goes back to my theory and my philosophy on these licensed comics is that if you are continuing the story, do the story. If we can get the cast, give the people who want more Charmed the closest thing to what they love to begin with.
Right.
I'd say bring the cast in. That would be sick. In fact, there's a different Charm podcast that I appeared on before, and it's run by this great guy Kevin, and
it's Words of the Witches podcast.
Yeah.
Words of the Witches. I love those guys. Now I watched the episode that took on season 10, issue 5. And they had the guy who plays Balthazar. And he was reading my lines for Balthazar, and that was crazy.
That probably was a moment for sure.
I couldn't believe it because the truth is that I've written at this point over 400 comics in my career. I've written a lot of books that are my own, that are my pure from start to finish, my idea of my creation. There's a lot that means a lot to me. So I went into listening to this podcast like, I'm taking like a fun, light walk down memory lane. I didn't expect to look back at what I had done and be like, whoa, But bruh, when I heard those lines being read, I was like, this is, I can make a list of cool things that happen in my career. That definitely ranks some. I don't know where it ranks, but it ranks somewhere.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. So if anyone wants to gift me with a cameo, these actors reading my lines, I feel like that's a pretty cool gift. But bringing dude onto the podcast to read the lines, so cool. And he wasn't just skimming through. He read it in character, and I was really impressed. Yeah, it was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was nice.
Well, Pat, I want to know what you're up to lately, and some projects that are coming up. If you recommend anything from your archive that people should read about to kind of get a sense of your writing style, or any favorite stuff that you've written in the past, we'd love to hear about it. I want to kind of give the floor to you.
Sure.
And yeah.
Yeah. I have a publisher called Space Between Entertainment. I have been putting out my own books using crowdfunding Kickstarter for years now. A series that I've been running for quite a long time that I believe that Charm fans would love is called Destiny New York. The very brief is that, all these fantasy stories, and when the big journey is done, the item is destroyed, the prophecy is complete. My idea is what happens next. The concept, it follows this girl, Logan. She had a prophecy made about her when she was young. She completes her destiny when she's just 13. Now she's entering her 30s trying to figure out life after destiny. And she is dating this woman Lilith, who is the last surviving member of the mystical mafia. So it's been described by reviewers as, you know, like Harry Potter meets The Sopranos, and that to me was the closest comparison there. It's run for 6 volumes so far. We do 1 volume per year. We have a bunch of spin-offs, including Gangster Ass Barista. We have Smoke Meets the Future. We have Cherry Gilbert Necromancer. So it is quite a world to dig into. If you like my writing on Charm Season 10, or if you think that I destroyed the characters that you love, maybe you can watch me destroy characters who you don't even know. Yeah, my Etsy is Space Between Comics. On Kickstarter, I launch a new Kickstarter or 2 every month. My newsletter covers it all. It is tinyletter.com/patchand. I appear at conventions all the time. I'm traveling around the world. So in this case, only come to me if you liked it. If you didn't like it, I mean, I don't need anyone to try to kill me, you know?
Oh, no, please, no. Oh, my God.
There's one thing that that always stood out. I've actually talked about this on a podcast before, and it's funny now, but when I saw it, I was like, damn, like, you know, because Shannon Doherty, people really thought that I had like a problem with her not appearing in the comic. I absolutely had none. You know, she had her own issues on the show. I wasn't around in any way of the show. Right. I came in years after that had happened. That happened during season 3, and the show had been gone for many years. Yeah. Season 9 took a couple of years to produce, and then I came to season 10. Those personal issues, over a decade old by the time that I came in. But people took what I did with Prue as an insult to Shannon, as if I had some kind of, you know, beef with Shannon. I have no clue why, because I would love to meet her. She is an immense talent, you know. But someone said that because of what I did to Prue, they wish that her cancer was in my mouth.
Oh my God!
Such a whimsical death wish, you know.
Wow.
God.
Yeah.
I think some people really would, you know, had this idea of like, if you can't bring her back, don't write about her at all. And you know, I understand that, but you know, that's going a little too far. Yeah,
that's horrible.
That's too bad you had to experience that.
Oh, it's so good. You know, I mean, there was a lot of conversation and a lot of, you know, people got mad over things like the canon of the comics. Because here's the thing. Canon is dependent on who is in charge of the property. People said that Constance M. Burge never blessed the comics. Constance M. Burge wasn't involved in most of the series.
I was going to say, she left. Didn't she leave after season 3 or even earlier than that?
There was no controlling entity on Charmed. There was no authorial voice. It was CBS. So that was our thought in saying that, yes, it is, you know. And the fact of the matter that if someone came up to me and said, no, it's not, I would be like, okay. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter at all, because this is what we're getting. You know, like, there is not going to be, in my mind, I am in the same boat as you guys, you know, like, if it happened, that would be so sick. If there was a TV revival, that would be so sick.
Oh, yeah.
I would gladly say, yeah, of course they're not going to cover the comics. Why would they have to reference almost 50 issues of books that most of the general audience is not going to read? Absolutely, obviously, of course they're not going to do that. But here's the thing. That's not going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
So this is what we're getting. This is the story. That was always my perspective. And some people liked that and some didn't. My thought was always just, give the readers what I would have wanted, and I like what I did. I can, it's funny. I can read it now as if I had no involvement. It's been years.
Wow.
I listen to these podcasts. I listen to these video specials on it, and I'll go back and read what I wrote, and I'm like, oh, I see what he's doing there. It's me, But it's been so many years. It's been so many years of me not reading it, and just moving on in my career and doing other things that I look back and it's cool to see that I like it. I felt like I was doing a good job as it was coming out. I was putting a lot of myself into it. To me, in my mind, I was catering to what fans would want. I was also challenging what fans would want and giving them something that I thought was honest and interesting, and ask questions about the nature of what they want. There's all that talk about we as Charm fans, and maybe not all of us, but I feel like the Charm characters had a lot of bad things happen to them, and they really took everything happens for a reason at face value. And I was like, why would they think that? Why would they think that still? They wouldn't, So I wanted this season to kind of dig into that idea, and that's why the final issue is called The Reason, because it is about the hope in that, and the silliness in that, and the humanity in believing that idea, and challenging that idea and reclaiming it and sort of becoming the reason, and yeah, I can read it now as if I didn't write a single word of that thing.
But so you can almost be now a viewer, a reader, and escape in it and enjoy the story that way, which is great.
Yeah, and I'll get to the issue where Amelia comes up like, who the hell is this?
Gotta take that little asterisk up there.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much that I can talk about. I mean, we definitely didn't cover everything, but I think I got a lot of what I was curious about through this. So thank you so much for answering our questions and being here today. Seeing Daryl was great, and I thought Knox was an interesting character. I loved his university. All of that was good. We'll definitely look for your work here in the future, and
Space Between Entertainment. We'll have your links in the description below, wherever this is.
And we really appreciate you being a fan and giving us the closing. And in the world of multiverses, whatever happens next, this is one of those. This is one of the endings, and it is what it is. So I was very happy with how it wrapped up, and
all right, amazingly. So thank you so much, Pat. Thank you for giving us those sister moments, like we said earlier, and just those little moments of closure that I think we needed all as Charm fans. So
yeah. All right, Charmies. Well, that's gonna do it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like Ryan said, you'll see Pat Shan's work and links on how you can read some of his other work. And thank you all for listening. And until next time.
Bye.